online since the stay-at-home order. So really exciting, really kind of different format that we're doing, but it's been a lot of fun. 1 Million Cups is a national movement founded by the Kauffman Foundation to celebrate entrepreneurship. In Eau Claire, we do things a little bit differently where we celebrate entrepreneurs from even concept phase startups all the way to fully established businesses that are maybe making a pivot in what they're doing. So today we have Dr. Emily Elsner-Twiesme from Bright Business Consulting, and she has presented for us or before in the past, but she's here to kind of give us an update on where she's at and kind of how this group has kind of maybe steered her direction a little bit differently than what it was when she first came to us. So with that, I'll kick it over to Emily, and then after her presentation, we'll have the opportunity for some Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you, Adam. It's so great to see everybody. Let me, hold on. Unlike Adam, I can't talk and do this at the same time. I'm not that astute yet, so you got to give me a second here to share my screen. Okay, there we go. Awesome. So today we're going to talk about, my business is called Bright Business Consulting, and my tagline to help you understand what we do is transforming people managers into people leaders. And I'm super excited to be here today. I presented in August of 2019, and the world and life has changed a lot since then. So I'm excited to give you some updates about how my business has changed, and then to get your input on where, on some of the things that I'm struggling with. So I think I know most of the people on the call, but if I haven't met you yet before, I spent the first part of my career, or a bulk of my career, teaching in higher education. And then I got my doctorate in business administration and decided that researching for the rest of my career wasn't the right fit. And so I started Bright Business Consulting. And so the thing that we joke about a lot in 1 Million Cups is after I presented, I've become a regular. This is like one of the highlights of my week. And we always joke that I'm always the person who's asking like everyone, well, how can you make that more specific? Or how can you narrow what you're doing? How can you narrow your scope and to find your niche? And so that's part of the reason why I have this picture, because it's a pretty small window. But part of why I ask that question all the time is because that is one thing that I am constantly struggling with myself. But I've found that the more that I've tried to narrow things, the easier things have gotten for me. And so that's, I think, one of the benefits of being a part of this group. So in 2009, oh my gosh, ooh, go back. Okay. So I started the business June of 2019, and the past year has been like the year of and there's a picture of a kitchen sink here too, because that is like, I was trying to do everything in the kitchen sink. I started my academic career as an English major, and then I taught business communication. And so the challenge a lot of times with an English major is that like you have the skill set of creative thinking and critical thinking and problem solving, but it can be difficult because it's not very specific. And the same thing goes with business communication. Like everyone needs business communication, but that is, and everyone needs those skills, but when you're trying to put that into a business, it's that you can't be that broad. And so, so I have worked on training, coaching, strategic development for businesses. I've written employee handbooks in the last year. And so it got to be way too much. And part of that too, I got away from my mission, which I love this quote: "In a gentle way, you can shake the world." And so one of the things that I'm really, really passionate about is getting women into leadership roles in businesses. And that's not something that we can fix overnight. That's not, you can't wave a magic wand. And I think we have seen that change is really hard and it takes time. But my goal, so as I've thought and processed over lots of years, I think one of the ways to really make an impact is to change how workplaces function, to make it easier for women to get into leadership roles. This might take us too far into the weeds here this early in the morning, but there's something called second generation gender bias, which is this sort of phenomenon where it's people aren't overtly sexist, like like making a sexist comment to a woman or something like that, but the way that our organizations and institutions are structured is that it doesn't always it's not always conducive to women in the workplace or families in the workplace, but sometimes we don't even recognize it. And so that's the second generation part of it, is that a lot of times we're participating in these systems that don't work anymore for the way our culture has developed, but we don't even realize that those systems are putting barriers in front of us. And so my goal is so that I can't fix everything, but I want to gently shake things. So as I've moved on, I've realized that I really need to like pick an industry and make an impact. So I'm going to try to make waves in one place, and then hopefully have the ripples work outward to make a difference. And so and this really comes from a place of a sense of duty, and to honor the people and the women and men too who have come before, who have really paved the way for me to get where I'm at, but then also to recognize that I need to make an impact so that the people who are coming up behind me have more opportunities and have more can push the envelope further. And this was really, for me, especially right when I got done teaching, was really impactful because I have two daughters, and they all the college students that I was teaching was like, their age was like right in the middle between my kids and me. And so we would sort of talk about that, it was their job collectively to make things better, so that when they were my age at like 35, 36, 37, and my kids were sitting in college and getting ready to do internships and stuff like that. We didn't talk about how old I would be at that point, but that it was their job to make sure that they were doing everything they could when they got to be managers to make things better for other people. And so I feel like in the past year that I have in some ways kind of like lost sight of that mission, but that is what really drives me, and I'm so passionate about it. And so I'm trying to figure out now how I can get back to having how I can keep doing the business, but also like not ignoring that mission, because I feel like that mission really, it lights me up. And that is, I think, really important to not lose sight of. So right now for the business, I have, and especially this like time being at home, the COVID stuff has really, it came at a good time. There's not, I'm an optimist, and so I try to find the good even in situations that are not always so good. So I'm not saying this like flippantly or like trying to diminish everything that has gone on, but I try to see the good in things. And so for me, having to be home for 2 months has been good, because it's really made me realize that I needed to change some things about my business if I wanted to be able to sort of like have a life outside of work, but also be doing work that I found meaningful. And so that's where I've really started to kind of pivot. So before, I thought that I really wanted to do in-person training and work on site with companies and stuff like that. And I'm realizing now that I really need to, like, that might not be the right fit exactly. And so So what I'm working on now is I am working on content marketing, which if you had a chance to watch Josh Rizzo's, I believe I got the last name right, presentation yesterday on content marketing, it was like phenomenal. But so I've got free content. I'm working on an online training, so this would be like a paid sort of a situation where I'm working on a class, and I'll show you a little bit more about what that looks like in a minute. I'm thinking sort of the next step beyond the online training is doing leadership team coaching, because what I'm also finding is that, you know, you can help one leader in a company get better, but if they're working with lots of other people who are not strong leaders themselves, or don't know how to work through conflict, or you know, sort of are poor communicators, one person shining really bright and learning how to shine bright is not going to fix the overarching system and the structure. And so working with leadership teams, whether that would be like once a month, sort of sitting in and helping goal set and walk people through changes, that might be one way that I can help, but not necessarily have to take over. And then the final option would be on-site strategic development. And this would be, I'm thinking like high cost. I only do this a couple of times a year for companies. So it's, you know, it's manageable on my end, but then it also is worth the price tag when people realize that they're, you know, I can't think of the word, elite is not the word. Okay, you know what I'm talking about. And somebody's screaming at their computer telling me the word that I'm missing, but that's okay. Okay, so in terms of a target market, this would be specifically for the training, would be somebody who's somewhere between the ages of 30 and 50 years old. They're a manager and likely at a company that has less than 50 people. And the less than 50 people part is because companies that get to be bigger than that usually have you know, a big enough HR group that they would maybe do training on site, or they might do more leadership development or something like that. So I'm trying to work with smaller companies in some kind of a professional field. Likely these people would have a bachelor's degree or some college education. Maybe they've worked partly on a master's degree, maybe they have a master's degree, but I don't know that that would be necessary. And then the other thing is they're working with a soon to be retired baby boomer. And part of the reason for that is because as somebody retires, it's more, you know, they're going to start looking at the company and try to figure out how they're going to make a transition. And that might be a really great time to help the person who's 30 to 50, who's maybe saying, we need to make some changes in our company, but maybe the owner who's a baby boomer has been, you know, who started the business and has been working in it for the past 30 years and is maybe less open to change, that there might be the time for that conversation. And the place that I'm thinking in the financial industry, possibly banking. I'm thinking independent law firms or independent insurance agencies, but I'm also open to ideas, and I'm hoping that that's a place that we can have a conversation in a little bit here. Okay, so this is accommodating workplace. This is what I'm thinking the class would look like. And by class, I guess it's, you know, it's almost like a bundle. So there'd be sub classes or units within this big class. And I'm thinking this class would be like 8 or 10 or more hours of content that someone could work through. So it would be, and I think you sort of have to go from 2 angles. One would be structuring classes. So classes that really help work on the structure of the business. So this would be like job descriptions for dynamite applications. Job descriptions are a place that people don't even recognize that they're like being exclusive when they don't intend to. Updating human resource policies. So this would be like, you know, making sure that there's maternity and paternity leave, that there's updated sexual harassment policies and like ways to go through things. One of the companies that I did some work for, it was like family business, and It had been in operation for 30 or 35 years. And I, as a court, like talking, I said, well, hey, where's your employee handbook? And it was like, hang on a second. And so left, came back. They had to like dig through somebody's drawer to pull it out to make photocopies for me. So it's like, okay, well, this isn't going to work. You have to have it be more accessible and updated than this. And then also helping people figure out how to measure outcomes with metrics. And then the second piece is really like the communication part of it. So helping managers communicate to motivate their employees, how to help managers identify and manage conflict, and then how to lead teams virtually. So each one of these 6 points would be either a webinar or a class. And so right now I'm working on a class, just sort of like the first piece of this. So it's leading teams virtually. And so this is what I'm working with something called Podia or Podia. I can't ever remember how to pronounce it. But so this is like 12 minutes of me narrating PowerPoints on how you really work on transformation, transforming your skill set, and then talking specifically about tasks and deadlines, and like helping a manager set very specific tasks and specific deadlines. And then there's some written content about each of these sections, and then there's 2 quiz questions. And so and in this class, so there's this piece of it, and then there's maybe 6 or 7 other components in the leading team virtually, and that would be one class. And then so thinking this much bigger class would be to take the leading teams virtually, and almost think of it as like stacking Lego blocks, right? Like, so you're going to have these stacks of classes in a big overarching, I wouldn't say like semester long class, but maybe that is helpful to think of it that way. All right, so the questions I have for you that I would love to have your input on top of whatever other things you have want to talk to me about, are what target industries make the most sense to you? Should I stick with the financial industry? Are there other industries? I'm with the thought that I'm trying to get as specific as possible. Do you have any thoughts on doing the leadership team coaching in terms of how to structure that? Do I meet with them bi-monthly, once a month, once a quarter, things like that? And then should I be overt in my mission to get more women in leadership positions? So in marketing materials and things like that, is that something that I say, like, this is what my mission is and this is how I'm going to do it? Or do I keep that driving force sort of like a part of what I'm doing, but not so overt? All right, let's talk. I'm excited to hear what you have to say.
Awesome. So you can feel free to open up that participants tab and hit the raise your hand button if you have any questions. We'll unmute you one by one. Otherwise, if you don't feel comfortable going on camera, you can open up the chat and drop questions in there, and we can intersperse those in as well. So we've got Tabitha here.
Hi, Emily.
Hey, Tabitha.
How are you doing? You did such a great job.
Thank you.
So I loved your presentation, as I already said, but I guess as a suggestion as on what to do about promoting like women in the workplace, I do think that is I think that is something that you shouldn't be shy away from.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that is something, like you said, that your target demographic are people or like baby boomers, like getting ready to retire and like get those reins. And I think, and I don't speak, and I'm not saying this for all baby boomers, but I know that there is a tendency to not be in like the same, like have a lot of like older, you know what I mean, like viewpoints on workforce improvements and stuff, and being able to sit with them and be like, no, that doesn't really do it anymore. And I think being able to be like, this needs to be a thing in order for your business to grow, and like and not shying away from empowering women, I think is something that is really cool and you shouldn't shy away from.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Excellent. We've got Anne. Sarah
agree with you.
up in the chat there, she thinks it's important to get the right people into leadership that may or may not be women. So just thinking about that point of getting the right people in leadership positions. There you go, Anne.
Yeah, well, and so I think part of it is, yes, the right people, but also just like making sure that there's the opportunity that, I mean, I don't think it would work to say we're only going to have women running the world. That's not going to work, and that's not what the mission is. I think it's more just trying to make sure that, especially in some industries where it's like so male dominated, that we're trying to make space for women. That's all. But I agree, you want the best person in the job for sure.
Can I comment? I was just going to say, a lot of times it's helping the dynamics and the difference between how men and women. So I think there's benefit to both, and sometimes, especially in a male-dominated world, they don't understand that, or they just see the difference, and they don't understand what the benefits are. So being able to help people understand those differences and why both are important would open those doors in instances where maybe they have a bias and they don't even understand why. That makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. Anne.
Hi, Emily and all.
Hey.
Thank you for presenting again. I always can't wait to hear from you and to see what iterations and development you are making. The women thing was a new thing to me, so that's going to be a whole nother conversation sometime. But my comment today, I listened to you trying to talk about and narrow down your target market, as well as then I saw your slide about all the content. It struck me just today that maybe the challenge and the focus should be around that. You know, you talk about narrowing. Maybe it's more around the content than the who it's for. You know, becoming the this amazing expert as you are in so many areas, but focusing on what is that narrow thing that I will be doing over and over for people and many iterations of it, but and maybe less worry, not that you are worrying, but about the who it's for, like which market is going to grab onto it. So that's my thought for today. Thank you again.
No, that's good. Thank you.
We've got James, then Liz, then Ben.
Oh, nice job, Emily. Can you guys all hear me?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay,
Hi, James.
my connection's a little weak, but I hadn't thought about this, but it's quite obvious. I work in a manufacturing setting, and your baby boomer retirement thought, I think, could be really powerful. And I know it goes against what the last person said about, you know, focus on your content, but we see a lot of that. And I'm sure if you haven't already, you looked at the stats of how many of these baby boomers are retiring, and the younger generation that kind of needs to one, become a leader, and probably a different kind of leader. But what we're seeing is the loss of job knowledge that goes away with those people. So maybe as, you know, they're nearing retirement, finding ways to help businesses and leaders capture that knowledge of those people before they leave. And I do some work in lean manufacturing and continuous improvement, and some of what falls into that then is standard work practices that, you know, and really capturing well what they do well, those people that will be leaving.
Yeah. Yep. No, I think that's great. And right, you're right though, because if you have somebody that spent their whole career building their business and then they're walking away from it, I mean, I think it's hard I can only imagine how difficult it is to walk away, but also then to like, how do you get all that knowledge into somebody else's, right? So having a plan and having, you know, like I think it has to be strategic about how you're going to make the steps to doing it. So that's really good. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and I think it's part, so obviously what you're talking about is part of succession planning with these companies.
Yep.
One other thing is I think your kind of niche, or you're talking about your niche being maybe a couple industries, and smaller companies. We're a company of 150 people,
Yep.
but we're one division of like 80,000 employees worldwide, and we have that exact. Yeah, so we have that exact problem in our division. So I don't know if it was me, if I would be trying to focus as much on, these companies with 50 employees, just because that exists. I think the situation we're talking about exists everywhere.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Awesome. Liz.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Great. Emily, I'm so glad that you're presenting again, and it's always fun to hear your progression of your company. Also, I second Anne in what she had said about everything too. Yeah, I wanted to say that in your talking about the women in the workplace, you gave me a really good example in just one of our casual conversations that we had about kind of the format of the workplace and meeting times. You had said, like if a board meeting is at 3:30 at a bar, and women may potentially have to go pick up kids from school, or might not want to have a beer at that time or something like that. Just the format of when things are scheduled was a good example that you had given me once regarding that. And do you recall what I'm talking about?
Yep. Yeah, I do.
Okay. So I think providing more examples like that can kind of help make your point of what you're in the workplace. And I think that, yes, it would be good to kind of put some of that in your advertising, underlining, since it really is one of your passions. But I would just really, really brainstorm about how you want to word it. Because it is kind of like what we were saying before, is you do want the right people in leadership that may be male or female. But I think from what I've heard you talk about before, it's kind of reformatting sort of our structure, whether that has to do with maternity leave or just communication or meeting times, etc., the format of the day. So just really, really brainstorm lots of different ways that you could say that, so you're not excluding the right people that might be good for the job too.
Yeah, no, I love that. Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for reminding me of that situation too.
Excellent. We got Ben. Ben, you're on.
Can you guys hear me? Sorry. Everyone's doing like their greatest robot impression. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Hey, Ben.
Hi, Doc.
Hey. Are you ABD yet? Are you close?
I'm close. I have 2 more classes left.
2 more classes. Okay. I couldn't remember.
2 more. Congrats. You're a beast. You're awesome. You're my hero. I think, with consulting, from my personal experiences and observing others, a challenge is that you have to deal with people's egos, because people essentially have to admit that they need help. So I think a big challenge for consultants in general is that they have to find people who have the problem, know the problem, actively trying to fix it. So as you think about your advertising and your marketing efforts, think about where these people are looking to try to solve their problem. And I think your content creation strategy that you're going after has been really good. I'm still riding the Gary Vee high a little bit, as a lot of people do. And I think Gary Vee provides a lot of great resources for creating content in that way. And then one other comment. So just a thumbs up on the content creation strategy. Another comment has to do with the leadership coaching. You had a question about process and things like that, and how often to meet. Something that I've seen is individuals need accountability even when they know they have a problem and they're trying to solve it. So if there's a way for you, instead of meeting up maybe on a monthly basis, every 2 weeks, just via Zoom or something like that, just to hold people accountable and keep the train moving, I think will be important if you go down the path of the leadership and continue to go down the path of leadership coaching. Just those little check marks along the way, the little wins to keep the momentum going, because otherwise people get lost in their business as opposed to working on it. So
on it, right? Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Cool. You're my hero.
Thank you.
Just want to wrap it up with that.
Thanks.
Awesome. We've got Beth.
Hello, Emily.
Hey.
So the question on being either really overt in your messaging about working to help get women in leadership positions or not, I think it might be worthwhile just to spend some time thinking about why you may be feeling any kind of resistance toward it, and just that a little bit, because that might give you some insight on which way you decide to go. My feeling is that if you are forward about it, you're going to attract companies that may not be open to determine which attract those companies that are open to it, fully aware of it, and they're very kind of to what Ben was saying, that they realize and they want to have that kind of a change. You'll attract those type of companies. Otherwise, you'll attract the type of companies that you may be able to crack it a little bit, and you'll be able to affect a lot of other things in their company, but it's not going to be quite as overt. I think sometimes we as women shy away from saying that we're feminist or we're doing something specifically to help women because we're worried about some kind of backlash, which happens. And so to spend some time thinking about where the resistance is coming from and what kind of companies you really want to attract might be
awesome.
Forgetting that, like, I mean, I'm at the point right now where it's like, I want to work with anybody because I need money, right? But like, I don't want to spend my whole time like working with jerks if I don't, not to say that people, you know what I mean? Like you're right. You want to like attract the right people to you. Yep. I think that's good. Thank you.
Awesome. I'll come to Sarah in just a sec. I just wanted to highlight a comment in the chat from Joellen. She said, wonderful presentation. Your sincerity and passion shows through. Just as a note, as a baby boomer, many of them simply just can't retire. That's why they're right for connections and startups and why she's doing 200 Main with her husband. They learn enormously from the younger generation, and they likely also have lots of info and wisdom to share. So it's also forced them to become more tech savvy. And also, apologies, I'm having some major connection issues today. So sorry if I'm choppy or things like that. Sarah, let's go to you.
Who did you want us to go to? I think we lost you there for a second.
I think it was me. Was it me, Adam?
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Getting a note that my connection's unstable, so just warning you. First of all, Emily, great content. I think that you have all the skill in the world when it comes to content. You know, that's your background. You understand communication and you do it very well. One of the things that I understand is that as you do your presentation today, you're talking to a very specific audience, and I think that it was really well done to help us understand where you are and where you're going. But one of the things that I see a lot, and that I think we're all guilty of, is getting stuck in what we do and telling people what we do instead of telling people how their outcomes are going. And that's really two different stories. So I might not feel like I have a problem because I don't have an employee manual, for instance. But if what you can help me understand is how much better things are going to run, or the ability to avoid problems, or the ability to hire people who might shy away because there's not something official in place, those are outcomes that are beneficial to me as a business owner, that don't make it feel like it's just a rule or a regulation, or that, you know, I don't have this freedom anymore somehow. Because I think you probably run into some of that too with some of the work that you're doing. So putting yourself into the shoes of the business owner or that manager and helping them understand why having you work with their team is going to make their business better, more profitable, a better place to work, run more smoothly, eliminate conflict before it even starts. There are all kinds of, you know, stories there. So I would just encourage you to think about that as you and talk with potential customers.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you. One thing that I'm working on is like a 5-question survey that would be free on my website. And so it would be questions like, how many times, or like, have you had to rehire I can't talk anymore, but like, have you had in the past 3 years an employee only stay with you less than 6 months or less than a year? Or, like some of those kind of pain point questions to try to help funnel people this way too. But I think that's a good point though, to just keep that in mind, the outcome rather than the content, because I'm an academic and I just think everybody loves the content and screw the outcome, right?
Yeah.
Which is not true. But
and you've got content, you know the content, and your customers hiring you for that, so they've got to believe you know that content, but they need to know what their outcomes are going to be too. Cool.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, we don't have any hands raised currently. If anyone has any other questions, feel free to raise that hand or drop them in the chat. Emily, I guess one question that I'd have for you is, what are your thoughts as far as like more potentially in-person workshops and things like that, and how do you get potentially new warm leads kind of through the door outside of outside of just the content that kind of sits on your website, the more like engaging content like webinars and things like that? Like, have you thought about offering maybe like a sample webinar?
Yes. So I think what you're asking is, how do I get new people in versus like online versus being in person, if I'm not going to do in-person things as much anymore? Is that?
Yes. And I think that the live aspect for you, it really highlights your personality and your your ability to engage an audience. And so I like that about you. And it doesn't necessarily always come through when you're just reading text on a website. So
right. Yep.
Maybe thinking about like what Josh was talking about yesterday with some more video content, and or like some interactive webinars like this that are short and really to the point, but like for more, do this, or for more.
Yep. No, I think that's good. Actually, after I got done with Josh's call yesterday, I told my kids that we were gonna have a video studio in the basement so that I could start doing this. And then we spent 30 minutes on a walk talking about how expensive it is to make a movie, and Liv wanted to know if she had to pay somebody to be in a movie like Descendants, and so we had to talk about how expensive the whole thing was, but that we could make some in our basement and it would be okay. So yeah, it's good. But I appreciate that. I think you're right that I need to figure out how to get me in front of people. I just need to get over talking in front of a video. That's what it boils down to.
Yeah. Excellent. Tabitha's got another question here.
Oh, it's me again.
Hey.
Hey. So, not necessarily a question, but I do think that the business idea that you had and have kind of had for at least as long as I've known you is being like an HR consultant for smaller businesses that don't necessarily have an HR, because especially in Eau Claire, I think that's a niche that a lot of people need. There's a lot of really good local small businesses in town that are small businesses that don't necessarily have the resources to have an HR department yet. And I think being that resource is something that a lot of these businesses need. And I just want to say kudos, because I think that's something that is missing in this extremely good, growing entrepreneurial and small business community that we have.
Yeah. Oh, that's really good. The wheels are spinning. That's good, Tabitha. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Brooke's got her hand up here.
Hey, Emily.
Hey.
Great job. So I've known Emily, I don't know, what has it been, like a year and a half now or something?
Yeah.
Feels like I've known you forever, but we're in a BNI group together, and in BNI we give testimonials for individuals. So I don't really have a question. I have more of a testimonial for Emily. I think sometimes when people refer to you as HR, I just don't want a negative connotation with that, because when I think of HR, I think of like, oh shit, I got in trouble. Now I got to go to HR. Where you're kind of more of a proactive HR, but you're not really HR. We jokingly call you the cool aunt in our BNI group. Like, when you don't want to talk to your stuffy mom, you go talk to your aunt. And that's really what Emily is. I mean, not to kind of pin you as one thing, but for people listening, and you're like, oh, but we have an HR department. It's like, yeah, you do, but they're stuffy and no one wants to go see them. So sorry if there's anyone on here in HR. I haven't gone lately, but it could happen. But really, for people listening and you're like, oh, we have that department, do we really need Emily? You do need Emily, especially as we all go back to the workforce, and there's like, people are going to have issues with being back at work, leaving kids, leaving dogs, leaving spouses, whatever. I think now is an excellent time to hire Emily on to be proactive for people, for that emotional support as they delve back into the workforce. So that's my babbling testimonial for you, Emily.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Emily, there's a good comment here in the chat from Rachel mentioning she's 22 years old, about to enter the workforce, and hopes to enter in a leadership position at some point in a male-dominated field. She knows that you're focusing on helping the baby boomers and managers, but have you also thought about working with them to show the value in the younger people in their teams really stepping up to those leadership positions?
Yes, I have. That's one thing that I kick around and that I have struggled with a bunch, actually, because I feel like college students are my people. And so that's been like one thing about not teaching that's been really hard, is that I don't get to be with my oh my gosh, I'm getting super overwhelmed here and emotional. But I like that group of people is just like really important and so special. And but I miss that. I feel like I kind of walked away, and I don't know yes. So the rambling answer there is like, yeah, I do. I think that's a really good point, Rachel. Thank you very much for saying that. But I don't know. I guess I would have to rethink how I would. I think that part of what I want to do, though, is try to make workplaces work for women, but also for men, and also for Gen Xers and wait, is that right? Gen Zers and millennials. Gen Xers are still figuring it out. That's what happens when I get emotional. Everything just starts to blur together. But yeah, no, I think that's a really good point, because that's the other thing too, is this whole group of people values. I mean, if you're gonna make generalizations, values things that are different than, and the other thing that's really challenging is that our world just kind of like got thrown up in the air and spun around a bunch of times, and we don't even know how the pieces are going to land yet. So yeah, no, I think that's really good.
And I think it kind of just speaks to the fact that it did kind of hit a nerve there, that you're passionate about kind of integrating the workforce and making people work together. And so really making the managers and people in leadership positions understand the value that younger people bring to the team, that's very different than what they're already offering and what they already might have on their team. So yeah, I think that's a kind of a bread and butter scenario for you.
Yeah. Yep.
Awesome. So it doesn't look like we have any other questions. So the last question that we always ask our presenter is, what can we as a community do for you?
I think you just did an incredible amount. So thank you. And I wish that I could give all of you hugs, which I can't. And not everyone likes hugs either, so that's okay. But when we can all meet again, yeah, thank you, Sarah. When we can all meet again, I'll make you cinnamon rolls or cookie bars or something like that, because I just miss all of you very much. So thanks for being here today.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Emily. This was really great to hear an update on where your business is at. All right. Well, that's all that we've got for today. thank you all for being here, and we'll see you next week.